is exported over to China.
But they can work at Walmart.
And that's what they do. And then Walmart comes into town with all the cheap goods that they've had coming from the imports, like we've just discussed, but then all of a sudden the person just lost his $35 an hour job is now at a very low wage.
So it's not to just pick on, as you said, Walmart. There's Target, there's
Yes.
J.C. Penney's, there's Kmart, there's all of these, Sears. Is it a possibility that this can be reversed, or is there nothing on the horizon that says that America is going to make a change in a way that China will wind up in a different relative position?
You know, change can always be made, but it's a very complicated scenario as we're viewing it right now. You know, we are so much in debt today in the United States. You know, we have almost $500 billion worth of a debt that we're going to be spending.
Now, $500 billion is the trade gap between the United States and the rest of the world?
No, that's United States overspending in our own budgetary.
Oh, is that the
process,
U.S. government?
Yes.
But how about the trade imbalance? I understand that's $500 billion
It is.
as well.
They're both. So we have the twin towers of debt there. And the problem that you have now is that, you know, any kind of damage that has been done has now been done. And what you have here is when you have corporations that move abroad and they tool up and they build large plants, and the 2.7 million jobs that we have in fact lost, you know, to get the lower cost goods in, those jobs are in fact lost. You can't go to some large firm and say, you know, can you close up and come back into the United States where the wage would be higher. So the damage that has been done is long range.
But is it going to accelerate? In other words, is that it, or does this
No.
thing continue?
All the trends that you see on the globalization today is that trend is going to go on. Again, I think that China is just beginning to grow. They're just beginning to build up a middle class. When you look at, again, the consumers over there, just 1.4 billion consumers just there. Not to mention the fact that they're beginning to export every place else as well. It's not just in the States.
Well, let's talk about just the scale and size of that economy. The United States has 280 million people consuming,
Right.
You know, men, women, children, et cetera. And between India now with 1.4 billion people and China with 1.4 billion, that's 2.8 billion people. And we're 280 million. We're exactly 1/10 the market as China and India.
That's right.
Now, just the scale of those markets would mean that if they get their act together and can continue to grow like that, that's an endless market. I mean,
It is.
and ours is
Market.
mature and more or less tapped out from a financial standpoint, isn't it?
It is. And just the sheer growth. I mean, the fact is that they are in their growth stages. And there is, as you have stated, there's many products that we have that have been made here in the United States that have become mature, you know, so it's really flattened out on the growth rates. But not a lot of China yet has actually reached the middle class. So they're just beginning in the growth stage. You can almost compare them with what Henry Ford had done for Ford in the economy here.
100
they're
years
just
ago.
beginning, yeah, they're just beginning to get their first GM plant. They're just beginning to build the Buick over there. They're just beginning to get to the point, you know, like Ford had stated, if you want to have the economy really expand, is you want to make sure that the worker that's down on the line that is building, you know, whatever product that he makes, that he's paid enough that he can buy the product that he makes. That trend, and I have a lot of students from China, said that trend is just beginning to take root now. You know, where they're trying to get the income, or the income is much lower than what you have over the United States. They're trying to get the income to a base in China right now, where the workers in the plant, whatever kind of product that they make, that they can afford that. And then it really begins to spiral up, where you have supply and demand within the same plant. And that growth rate has just started there.
Now, in a world that is no longer then controlled by just the United States and these powers getting larger than the United States, do you think there could be a radical shift in the position of the dollar? Because we've seen a lot of decline. This has been going on for a year.
The dollar has been declining. I mean, if we go and we view Europe right now, you have an economic community there that has great power. In fact, if you take the 15 nations that are in the EC, and you look at the community there, you'll see that, you know, there's about 10 billion worth of GDP there.
Well, now they've expanded to 25 nations.
Right.
Yeah.
And as they keep expanding there, you have a very strong bloc. But as you have read and you know, they have a lot of disgruntledness with the, you know, how our dollar is faring against theirs. And if you just look when the euro had been launched, it just keeps growing in comparison to what the dollar exchange rate is. And of course, that's a big risk to them as the dollar becomes weaker because our economy becomes weak. At least it has happened over the last 3 years. We lost so much net worth. That really plays a big play on their exports, the imports that come into the United States. And both China, India, and Europe are very concerned about that because the marketplace that they have is, in fact, still here.
Would you say that Americans, the average person, and the policymakers, whether they're in the state houses, the governors, or in Washington, the Senate, the House, the president himself, is not fully aware, or nobody's saying the potential for the downside because of this scenario?
Yes, the one thing that 9/11 has taught us that anything can happen at any time. And the one thing that I think that America has to look toward is that no person, company, or the United States can spend themselves rich. And with the deficit spending that we have going on in the United States today, one because of the war, but also because of the economy being flat for 3 years, at some point in time, the dollar has to become weak. There is no way to spend yourself rich.
Thank you very much. And so there is a need for you, as well as the United States, to manage its finances. Therefore, we have a great booklet that goes through the major principles in order to get a financial house in order. Why can't you ratchet up some of your savings? Well, this will address that kind of objective, that kind of a goal of making yourself more financially secure, managing your personal finances. Simply call the 800 number that you'll see in the ad, or go to tomorrowonline.org. And you'll be able to see this program, other fascinating television programs that are in the archives. And do also ask for your free subscription to the Good News magazine. Stay with us.